encourage you to keep pushing them to read and to read for pleasure. So it's just not something like a chore or a punishment for them. The second thing I want to talk about is the math placement in middle school. So remember that 5 years I talked about earlier with Ohio State and Mideast? So that means that math in 8th grade, you need to be in algebra, at least algebra 1. And one of the things that I've certainly found with students when they're not placed in algebra in 8th grade, it really shifts the colleges that can be on their list. It also will shift their testing plan as well. And so having this under their belt in 8th grade really will make a difference for them in terms of keeping their options open for where they can be admitted and also increasing their scholarship opportunity, okay? So that math in 8th grade is an important benchmark. And then the third thing that I want to talk about for middle school students is having some type of sleepaway camp. I mean, that's what they call it in their grade, sleepaway camp. And it's really about starting to help them with developing some independence. I have a student right now, she's a junior, and she is looking at schools in New England. And as long as we've been working together, she cannot stay one night away from her mom. So I'm not sure how this is all going to work out, but when there is some type of experience that they have younger, that really helps with that in terms of opening up their options and making sure that they're prepared once they do go away, okay? So with this sleepaway summer in middle school, there are a number of programs that maybe only 3-4 nights. I think Girl Scouts in this area has a 3 or 4 night program in the summertime that really just gives them a chance to, one, be independent, also develop some good social skills as well. And so I highly encourage in middle school years trying out some type of sleepaway experience. Now, this is one of my students from the San Francisco area, and he actually started a business at age 13. He started a little tech business where he did websites, and so I always like to give him talk about him as a case study when I talk about the middle school years. He is now a graduate. He graduated in 2015 from Princeton. And one of the things that I share with my middle school parents especially is really starting to think about shifting your mindset. And what this is really about is, thinking about this whole framework of, how you support your kid through their educational journey is, is totally different than perhaps it was when we grew up, when you were younger. And one of the things with, shifting your mindset is some of these points that I'll bring up later, or how you can really support your team through each of these important years as they're transitioning from middle school through high school and into college and life. So let's go to freshman year. Are there any questions before I go to freshman year? Anything about middle school years? Okay. So for freshman year of high school, one thing that freshmen can do is start to practice good organizational habits and study skills. Too many of my students who are older in junior, senior year just haven't started to develop those skills yet. And as the academic rigor increases, that makes it all the more hard to actually try to develop those skills. And 9th grade year is a good time to start to develop those habits. Sometimes they may have them in middle school, but what I find when I'm working with my 9th graders is oftentimes they're just kind of, bumming around and, they're spending a lot of time, as someone said, looking at their phones and really haven't started to, get themselves together in terms of their organizational skills. And one of the things I even talk with them about is, if they're going to be using that phone, as a social media tool, as a way to communicate, also using some type of organizational tools on their phone that can help them. And even some study apps are available. So thinking about how to help them with practicing those skills earlier on, because each year of high school is going to demand more from them in this regard. The second thing I want to talk about is mapping the courses forward. Now, what I mean about this, in terms of even talking about mapping the courses forward, is oftentimes for ninth graders, what they do is they look at, okay, these are the classes I'm taking in ninth grade, and at the end of the year, these are the courses that I'm taking in 10th grade. What I want to encourage you to do is to have your team look at what are the courses for the next 4 years of high school. Because that's going to play a role in terms of their list. And so, for example, we talked about having math in 8th grade, algebra 1 in particular. So scheduling out, well, in senior year, they should be in a calculus class. Junior year, pre-calc. And so just making sure, that that's going to be offered for them at your high school. If they're planning to take any AP classes, making sure that those are tracked out for 4 years as well. And the foreign language is important also. Sometimes I'll have students who want to drop out of a language in their senior year, or maybe even in case of one of my students, she wanted to drop out in junior year because she just couldn't stand taking French. But what happened is she ended up dropping her French class in senior year, and sure enough, the college she really wanted to go to out in California happened to be a school that required 4 years of foreign language plus taking a language in college. And what does she do? She's insistent that no, I'm going to apply anyway, and I'm going to drop French. Because we talked about this in junior year when she and her parents went out to visit. So she dropped it and she applied in the fall. And so what happened is she ended up sending a letter to say, this is why I dropped it. And she got rejected. She was denied admission. So really thinking about that as far as how it affects their list. The third point I want to mention to you, and you'll see that this is a theme in terms of talking about summer, is using the summer after 9th grade to really perhaps try out something new. And it can be in any area. One of my students that I had a few years ago, well actually he's still a student, he's a senior now, but he's a gamer. And I was on this college tour, and this professor mentioned that, an economics professor, mentioned that at the start of every term, he always asks the students to raise their hand if they're a gamer. If they